Southern Africa has a remarkably high diversity of species. A biodiversity reckoned to be the third richest on the planet after Brazil and Indonesia. This variety is totally dependent on a wide range of equally unique vegetation zones, or biomes. The Last Game, a 6-part series of 26-minute episodes, documents the multitude of factors affecting the wildlife. It explores efforts to counteract the threats to the habitat that impact on biodiversity. The Last Game spotlights the full range of habitats and biomes, from the western deserts to the moist subtropical forests, from the high-veld grasslands to the woodlands. The series examines the conservation endeavors to maintain the fragile web of life in each one. The series recounts the human influence on the environment, starting with the balanced relationship that once existed between indigenous people and their land. People that possessed a knowledge of sustainable utilization handed down through the millennia. The arrival of European colonists heralded the beginning of the end of the game. Armed with weapons of destruction and a belief in the limitlessness of Africa's wild resources, they proceeded to decimate the animals. And for the first time in Africa, man upset the balance of nature. The series recalls the crash of wildlife populations in the face of this onslaught. While some species disappeared altogether, many other populations plummeted to the brink of extinction. The Last Game pays tribute to early conservationists and their mission to halt the plunder. By establishing the first game sanctuaries and allowing the persecuted wildlife to regain a foothold on the continent, they managed to restore some of the balance. But the fences around these reserves curtailed natural migration routes, confining growing numbers of animals to limited areas of wilderness. This overpopulation strained the carrying capacity of the land, forcing conservationists to implement active management policies. In southern Africa, they culled the excess animals to preserve the habitats, a human solution to a human-inflicted problem. The series continues its historical presentation into the dark age of conservation, when Africa's wars of independence attracted tons of weaponry to the region. Poverty-stricken people, now armed with modern rifles, soon discovered the lucrative trade in ivory and rhino horn. Poaching threatened to wipe out the conservation successes in southern Africa, and nature endured a second wave of human onslaught. Between 1979 and 1989, the continent lost over 500,000 elephants, but not all the losses were due to poaching. In 1989, CITES reacted, defiantly reclassifying the large mammals as an endangered species, and many authorities implemented a shoot-on-sight anti-poaching strategy. However, this failed to address the root cause of the killing: the widespread poverty on the continent. Neither did CITES take into account the need for active management to maintain the habitat within fenced reserves. With public sentiment turned against culling, the ban brought a temporary reprieve for the animals. All culling operations were stopped and the numbers bounced back. Breeding at a rate of 5% per annum, overpopulation began to be a very real problem, threatening to destroy what remained of the wilderness. Although the elephants lived, human ignorance caused nature to turn on herself. With emotions running high, people forgot that next to man, elephants rank second in their ability to inflict long-term, irreversible damage to its environment, reducing the diversity of the habitat as well as its own food base by converting forest and woodland into grassland and desert. The Last Game will graphically illustrate many examples where elephants ravaged their environments beyond repair. For instance, within 6 years, the Mahungu Game Reserve in Namibia deteriorated from healthy acacia bushveld to a sparsely vegetated wasteland. In Botswana's Chobe Reserve, the riverine forest has been totally destroyed. A perfect riverine forest should be a lush green habitat, encompassing the riverbanks and supporting a great diversity of birds and animals. In Chobe, where elephant numbers increased to the present estimated 75,000, this biome has disappeared. If elephant numbers are allowed to grow unchecked, the delicate ecology unravels to a point where there is literally nothing left to eat. The wildlife populations crash and thousands of animals die of starvation. Nature solves the problem herself. The Last Game tracks the evolution of conservation thought. In South Africa, conservationists believe that protecting the ecosystem protects the whole of the diversity. Simply put, a healthy habitat ensures the survival of all its creatures. This philosophy, known as the ecosystem approach, underpins the practice of active management. On the subcontinent, thousands of animals still range freely outside the boundaries of parks and reserves. These animals frequently come into conflict with human beings. Subsistence farmers suffer severe losses to crop-raiding elephants, and the damage to agriculture and infrastructure often leads to the death of the offender. This provides a feast for the locals, but no long-term benefit to the people, the wildlife, or the environment. The series describes recent initiatives to increase the participation of rural communities in active management. Once people share in the financial rewards from all levels of conservation, they will protect instead of poach the animals. In particular, the campfire-type projects have achieved unprecedented success, transforming ex-poachers into fully fledged game guards. The Last Game explores all the techniques that fall under the label active management. The capture and translocation of animals, the controlled burning of reserves, an apparently drastic step designed to mimic nature herself. Intervention when avian diseases threaten wildlife, as is currently the case with bovine TB and lion populations. Rehabilitation techniques for poisoned or injured wildlife. Breeding programs and the reintroduction of endangered species back into the environment. The series spotlights important debates and controversies, such as the need for conservation to benefit financially from active management, which has been responsible for establishing many new reserves. Successful active management principles are at the root of reintroducing wildlife into these reserves, and active management is needed to ensure the continued existence of these reserves. The survival of the wilderness demands that Africa's indigenous people participate in the resources and benefits of these reserves and not remain beyond the fences. Only then will they share in the responsibility of protecting the environment as they did in centuries past. Conservationists are already pursuing this philosophy by training members of local communities, from simple tourism functions right through to top management level. The series underlines an important turning point in conservation history. Now, at the beginning of the new millennium, man must decide whether to opt for responsible utilization or allow nature to run her own course. If the latter, then this could be the last game in Africa.